if the games work. If the games you play work, you could give it a go. It's if Proton TP says like gold or above, it's like seamless. It feels like the same on Windows. I ran Linux for like 8 months or something last year, full time. But then a game came out with ECNC cheat that I wanted to play.
Right. And that's the thing that's probably going to be an issue, because there's a whole bunch of simple things that I want to use that's just not going to work. Like I want to use Scrivener for writing and stuff. I don't think Scrivener works on Linux because it primarily works on Apple. So like they even had to do some modding to be able to make sure that that worked on Windows. And
yeah, but Apple underneath it all is a Linux kernel. So
I mean, heavily modified,
this shit. But
this is why I said I don't know enough.
You don't need to know is part of the point, but since we're here, we can correct that. So
technically, Apple is built on BSD, but they're both Unix.
Damn.
Now let's talk about wizards that fry computers instead, please.
Fine. It's only my favorite superpower.
Exactly. So. All right. Harry's friends, TV tropes of Harry's friends. What are we going to start with? The full fellowship.
The fellowship. Yeah.
Yeah. Who is what in this full fellowship? Right. So they decided that Sam is Harry because he never gives up and something or other. I don't know if I fully agree with that, honestly. But some things that do make sense of, like, Thomas is Legolas, obviously. Mouse is Gimli because he's the shortest. Okay. Heaviest, probably.
I mean, yeah. Look, I get it. Legolas is an elf, but to, like, bottle him up down into his prettiness, just saying. Like, that was not what Legolas brought to the table 9 times out of 10. You know, it was something he also had, but fine. Who else would he be, you know?
So. Yeah, that's a bigger thing. Like,
he's also the most agile, Thomas Legolas.
He does use his gun regularly.
I'm just saying Legolas is way more effective than Thomas. Like, that's giving Thomas a lot of credit, I think. So,
but can you imagine the banter between Thomas and Mouse the way Legolas and Gimli were?
Yeah, right. No, I can't. But
I think Mouse can hold his own. All right. So they put Sonya as Aragorn, and I don't disagree, but I kind of feel like I want to think through that a little bit more. Like,
yeah, I mean, because it's because he's the knight, right? And whatever, but like. But it so undersells the complexity of Aragorn is part of the problem. But again, who else would you pick? You know, like, I mean, Sonya could almost be Faramir, but he's not a member of the Fellowship. You know, like if you wanted to expand it out to the Lord of the Rings, because Aragorn isn't a knight, kids. Sorry, you know, at no point. Like only very, very briefly at the end, especially if we're going by the movies, does Aragorn kind of get into the knightness. And that's just because he's embracing the idea that he's the king and needs to lead from the front. Okay.
Yeah.
The best parts of Aragorn, in my opinion, are like what he does at the Prancing Pony? Like the very, very first time you meet him, he fucking dupes a bunch of wraiths. And he basically bluffs his way through half of Middle Earth with a broken sword. Okay. Like this is book Aragorn. I'm switching over just a little bit, but like he straight up doesn't have a sword. He's carrying the pieces of a broken sword through Middle Earth. And that's basically what he's got going on. In the movies, they give him a sword because like, how does that work? But I'm pretty sure in the books, he didn't have it. Like he didn't have a backup or anything like that. That's part of why on Weathertop, he fights him with a fucking torch. Like, I think he uses a torch in the broken pieces. Now it's been like 10 years. So like, don't quote me for, you know, getting every little detail right. But like Aragorn is crafty. He's absolutely a ranger. And I mean, you know, but and Sonya is clever, right? He, you know, the Kevlar helps, right? Like he's not just, you know, an idiot either, but I don't know. It's not It's not a
Sonya
Venn diagram
is crafty.
overlapping.
He's happy to use the equipment that he has around him, similar to Aragorn as a ranger of like, we're going to use the plants and King's Foil, something or other. Like
Sure.
he'll use the equipment that he has available, but he also does do long traveling things, like when talking in changes of like, how bad is the bush? Is it good? It's worse than this place, better than that place, and he got it because like that's kind of rangery.
That's a really good argument. That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's also like who fits up the best, right? It's not like it can't always be like, it can't be like Justin said, a perfect Venn diagram. Like this,
Right.
It's just whoever fits the most. So the
Because-
argument more becomes who would be the alternative.
Right, because they put Leah as
Yeah.
Gandalf, which
Right.
an ancient, powerful, magical being who may look human but isn't. Okay, technically true, but the vibe of either one of them is completely wrong.
Oh yeah, I mean, not to mention the fact that like Gandalf is very much, hands off type of wizard, right? Like most of his tricks are either, literally just tricks, or he uses a subtle kind of magic to amplify something that is there. Leah's like, I'm as happy as a guy with 2 knives. I got to tell you, this is pretty great. Like she's like, can we murder now?
Yeah,
so.
When they present a temple virgin, it's like, ooh, would I please be able to kill the virgin, please? That's so polite. No one ever does that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
She's not, whatever. But who else would she be? I mean, there's no one else.
Right. Fair. I mean, Saruman wasn't part of the Fellowship, so,
True, but a good suggestion.
Yeah, that one would be good for her.
So here it does Murphy as Aragorn, which I feel probably fits less good, right?
Oh
so,
yeah. I mean, because we've actually been discussing the ones that are from the book and not necessarily the crazy TV tropes thing. And they put Martin as Boromir, which is probably just because who else are you going to do? And then of course he betrays. Okay,
right.
So they put Susan as Frodo because she is bearing the burden of the child and the vampire. I don't fucking get it. And because she's the one that Harry's running around to try to save, but wouldn't they put Maggie because Sam and Frodo? I do kind of like Pippin for Molly because Pippin gets into a lot of trouble and so does Molly.
Yeah. Well, and Pippin's the pretty one, as I tell the wife. So it was pretty funny because like that's how it's always been in my head. And then she's like, "Wait, which one's the pretty one? Which one's which?" And I was like, "Pippin's the pretty one. Come on, it's just what it is." So
I have never tried to compare it as to which one is prettier.
I mean, part of the joke is that it's like another reference you wouldn't get. So so for anybody else who actually likes movies, so in Serenity you've got like Fanny and Dingo or whatever, but like they're twins, right? And so like, well, Fanny's the pretty one, but like what? So Merry and Pippin, they're not twins, but if you call one the pretty one, you'll start a fight every time. So it's good.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and Pippin, pretty, it's right there. Just So. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is like, are they still the Fellowship on into like the 2 towers and whatnot when they all get separated? Because then like, do you go too far? Because like, I guess that's a good limitation too. Should we limit it to like the Fellowship of the Ring where they were properly the Fellowship and not worry about who's knighted with who and which king and like because the hobbits get knighted by various kings and stuff like that. So
right. So the Fellowship is an order unto its own, and they are still the Fellowship even when they split up. In my opinion.
Well, I mean, Aragorn too, right? So he says something like, "As long as we're true to each other," but. Yeah.
Sure, something but they split up, but they're still all considered one cohesive unit of the Fellowship, missing Boromir.
Right.
It is interesting he's the only one who really died.
I feel like Gandalf died.
That doesn't count.
I mean, it does. He didn't pass through fire and shadow to bandy crooked words.
He ascended.
With
That's
worm.
not quite the same thing.
He did die. he passed out of time and life, I'm pretty sure is the exact line. So,
But we did not lose him permanently. We
Well,
lost Boromir.
as a fan of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, there are very few people that like heroes don't tend to die, you know. So it depends, but yeah. So
There's a small argument.
Thing.
There's a small argument of who is Gollum. Gollum isn't part of the Fellowship, but who is Gollum?
Right, but he kind of was, you know. So
isn't Gollum Bob?
No,
because he's not necessarily part of the Fellowship, but he's there all the time, and he certainly does want a lot of things, like boobs.
All right. I could definitely see him having a My Precious moment in a dark cave somewhere. So
yeah, and then as sunlight is coming up, and he has to hide in the gun in the skull or something. So you're trying to kill me?
Yeah, right. He would know the secret paths and try to feed you to a spider. So, oh wait.
Sure. All right. Now the argument that Murphy is Aragorn. She has a magical sword, but doesn't feel ready to use it. The sense of right and good must do things, except
she is kind of pushed into the righteous role by literally a higher power. So
yeah, there's just the functionality of her being a cop and him being a ranger. It the little bit of the vibe seems wrong, but it's not the worst fit. Okay, then they move on to Justice League, which I know so little about that I really can't comment on it. Murphy is practically confirmed as Batman.
Okay.
Wouldn't Harry be Batman and Murphy be Gordon?
Shit. You're gonna make me actually think about this, aren't you? Like,
I only know what I remember in The Dark Knight, okay? So I just didn't.
Okay, the her as Gordon thing I could almost see because she literally lights the bat signal, right, or whatever. But we're also talking Justice League, not necessarily just DC in general, right? So like, if we assume that each of the Scoobies and stuff have to be a proper hero, just like, you know, the Fellowship wasn't like, well, there's Aragorn's squire, you know, so he's here because he's holding the sword or whatever. Like, you know, give him an actual role. Who would Murphy be? God, I'm not in the headspace for this. Like, Harry is Superman-ish, but like, he gets his butt kicked a little too much, and he's a little not
Michael
invincible.
is Superman. I mean, Michael gets his butt kicked, but Michael's he's the Superman.
I mean, yeah, you could see small favor as you know, Superman versus Doomsday, you know. The Death of Superman comics,
and then as he's running around with skin game and a giant jumbo jet he doesn't use it just
I mean, it's truth, justice in the American way. That's definitely Michael.
I mean, Harry being you know, the powerful one of the series, I do get wanting to put him as Superman, but he's get so much better as Batman.
Still ish, like, because
is it only doing DC here?
It's Justice League. Right, yeah. Justice League. So I mean, I personally feel like the Dresden Files fit better in the Marvel thing. Like, I actually ported him over for, I forget what the name of the game was, but Marvel. It was either Marvel Superheroes or some more appropriate name. But you know, did him as a wizard, like the magical background and whatever. But like. So I'd be tempted to put Harry as one of the more techno geeks just because he's got the gadgets and abilities and stuff, right? Not necessarily because obviously he's good with computers or anything because they'll blow up, but like, you know, like he's almost got the humor of Flash and gets his ass beat plenty, but he's not fast enough, even though, you know, he's one of the 2 or 3 that actually run, you know, like something like that. Like, you know, no, doing Cyborg would be too much credit. You know, like Cyborg is
I could see Green Lantern.
Okay, obviously, that's a great, So because Will is his superpower, I feel like I even had that somewhere before, but for some reason,
Yeah.
Green Lantern wasn't coming to mind. So
Also, especially, I think if we go by New Justice League, I don't think personality-wise he's so much as what's his name, the new Green Lantern, but Hal Jordan, the older one, his personality and dressing, they kind of overlap pretty well.
Gotcha. Okay. This says Butters is the Flash. I guess I could deal with that. So,
do you agree with Mortimer Lindquist as Aquaman?
No, but probably just because I can't get past the like power difference. Like,
yeah,
they're like, he's just as powerful as Superman in his area of expertise, and it's like, I mean, once we get to Ghost Story, I guess, but
but Aquaman and Aqua.
That's the part that I'm having trouble with is like the powers are not even remotely similar in my opinion, but I guess like his personality and story type are kind of there, like Aquaman running from his rightful inheritance, and so he's running from his powers kind of like Mort does, and then kind of gets forced back into it and is a total badass, I guess. I can kind of see that, but I feel like it's tenuous. So, I'm still not sure who I'd put as Murphy though, because part of the problem is like in Marvel, right, as often as not, like a lot of the people that you run into, like I'm just trying to think. I mean, you have a couple of people that are like literally gods, right? Like Thor, but then you've got like, the mutants are people, but they mutated and have got some crazy ass power. And then you've got, like Iron Man, right? And then contrast it with DC, and DC, almost all of them become gods in their own right? Right? Like Flash was just a dude, but like it gets to the point where like the literal Speed Force, which is a new force in the universe, like embodies him, and he becomes like he's so fast he can travel through time and just do ridiculously things, right? So it's like he's not just a dude who got mutated or whatever anymore, right? Like that's kind of how his story starts out, maybe, but like it evolves from there. Like if anything, like anybody who's like mortal-ish is still the Green Lanterns, but even still, as long as their ring is charged up and they're paying attention, like unless they're fighting other galactic level threats, like the ring basically makes them a quasi deity. Superman basically is. So like you've got Batman, he's just a dude, but Batman's the only guy who's been shown in canon to be ready to fight any of the others because he's such a thorough planner. And so like that's where I have a tough time like bestowing that mantle on somebody. Like Kincaid is Batman. Like if you want to go like that, right? Kincaid is absolutely ready to kill anybody in the Dresden Verse and has killed several of them on screen. So, like that, that's the kind of thing.
He's definitely planned, right? He's just like he knew exactly how he would take on Harry. He's like, as soon as he meets someone, he's like, "This is how I take you out."
Right? Be polite, be professional, and have a plan to kill everybody in the room. That's Kincaid.
He probably has a plan for Ivy, even.
I don't need that.
Well, he probably thought of it obsessively in order to counteract it. It's like, how would I kill her? Let's make sure that is impossible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I could see that for sure, But yeah, so that's the sort of thing. And then like Murphy, like Murphy is good at kung fu-ish. I mean, I'm just saying that in a blanket American term, not like the actual sport because it's Aikido, right? But Murphy's like one of the Robins. I'm sorry, but that's what she's gonna be. She's gonna be like,
oh, sure.
I don't even think
he was a gymnast,
right? But that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, none of them had particular powers until like maybe way later or something. Like, I mean, not even like Nightwing, right? I'm talking like maybe Dick Grayson in the early years, or Batman's
I am so out
kid,
of depth in this conversation.
It's funny too because like if an actual nerd showed up, I'd be in trouble. But I can at least talk a good game. So
Damian Wayne, I've only seen him in the newer cartoon movies, right. But I actually think he's a rather delightful Robin character. Like it's very different. And I like it. I like the dynamic that it's actually his son.
Right.
But when you think about it, When you boil it down, like with the Batman, and this like kind of how more dark and greedy it is, and then he just takes his adoptive children out to hunt the criminals all the time. It's a little weird. It's a little fucked up.
Right.
All right, moving on to something I really, really, really don't understand is Harry and Murphy are the new Merlin and Arthur. Why?
Which
what?
ones?
For what purpose?
Just kidding. No.
It's, like,
Except that they have sex as well. Well, thanks for clarifying that. That's the first
Who
line.
says Merlin and
well-
Arthur didn't? Who says Harry and Murphy will? I was like, what is going on here? There are, I think, 4 different arguments here.
Well, what's going on is we're still reading TV tropes, so we forgot for a moment
Who
that it
says
was
Harry and
ridiculous.
Murphy will? Well, we got that one
Yeah,
sorted.
Jost, so
Yeah,
or whatever.
That's
Right.
just
Like, Harry is Merlin because he's wizard. Demon reaches Avalon. Okay, sort of.
What?
Then Murphy
Isn't
is
Avalon
Arthur.
like?
It's supposed to be in the
Avalon's
British
like-
Isles?
Well, no. Notwithstanding the actual geographic location, Avalon is supposed to be like the pinnacle of good country, right? Like, what part of the haunted demon wastes of Demon Reach is? Oh man, I can't wait to build Camelot there. Isn't that exciting?
Avalon
Like,
isn't Camelot. Avalon is where the wizards went.
it's where the wizards went.
It's where
Alright.
magic comes from. I don't remember how it was described in various
Oh god,
ways,
that's
but
even
Avalon
more
was
horrifying.
Avalon was magic. Camelot was utopia.
Okay, that's where I'm getting my
Yeah,
wires
it's
crossed
like-
a little bit, but like
that
Demon
one
Reach
was
should not be
significant
the like Demon Reach is a well, but not for the reasons everybody thought it was, right? In universe. So like again, maybe this took place somewhere else, but it's at least up through Cold Days. But like, no, that's horrifying. You don't want Demon Reach to be the fountain of magic. Like that's the opposite of good things.
Right, but
So-
but it's an island that it is hard to get to, hard to stay on. And Avalon was like, because magic, it took magic to get there. It wasn't easy to find. I think all I can really remember is from watching the Mists of Avalon show thing from like more than a decade ago.
The show thing.
Yeah, because I think it was a mini series. I think, but I can't really remember honestly. But when the magic was leaving at the end of the story, they couldn't get back to Avalon, and she tried to do the mist lift up thing, and it wouldn't work. That's all I can really remember. Right. And Murphy is Arthur fucking why? Because she had a sword once?
Yeah, right.
Doing
I mean,
what?
yeah, Murphy's definitely not like pure enough for it, I guess, is the only turn of phrase that comes to mind. Like, I mean, and that's just notwithstanding even going into like compare, Full Moon versus Blood Rites, right? Where we see, literally the Valkyrie Avenging Angel versus the tarnished Valkyrie Avenging Angel, but she just like isn't pulling the sword from the stone. Like I just don't imagine. And I think that's part of what happens in Cold Days or Skin Game, right? It's just like she wasn't good enough, like, and I don't mean like she couldn't have beat him. She obviously beat him. She just wasn't
She
pure
was
enough,
judgmental.
Yeah. So
and then they to put Molly as Nimue because Merlin was her teacher and she has a thing for him.
Which
Okay.
I'm not sure like which of the mythology we're looking at now. So
Yeah, and then they put Ramirez as Galahad because Virgin, need I say more? Well, they call him Galahad in Turncoat? No, White Knight.
right.
But is that the only defining feature of Galahad?
I mean, it's like the first thing everybody thinks about Galahad. So
Okay. And then there's whatever Margaret Le Faye was doing and the connections of her name, I guess. And that Arthur has other siblings, like that, or Morgana, I guess, or whatever. And so like one of them is half sister Elaine. This is really confusing. But what's the purpose of this? What is the point of any of this little dialogue of casting people as the Arthurian legends?
Look, why were you okay when we did it for Lord of the Rings and then for DC
Because-
of all things, and now you've got a problem now that
Well,
we're
the DC,
doing...
I was confused because like I don't know half these people, but I know a little bit more about this. It's like you guys are wrong.
So Cyborg, he is very difficult to understand. He's part man, part machine. Then you've got Batman, which hopefully you're familiar with. No,
Also
I mean,
part man, part
honestly,
machine.
the Arthur stuff may like be somewhat useful, right? Like, I mean, Butcher is like a comic book nerd, right? So like, it may be important to see some of those influences like on the writing anyway. But like, if anything, like there have been hints, or at least certainly fan theory forever, that Harry is some way involved in the Arthurian legend. And I mean, part of that might be because Merlin was like a flesh and blood dude, right? And we're still not entirely sure what happened to him. And a bunch of people who put their brains on the desk when they start fan crafting, theory crafting, is that Merlin is the guy in the crystal, no matter how many times that's been dismissed by Jim. So like the Arthur stuff might kind of come into it, but I feel like this is like brain desk moment, because it's like, why is Murphy Arthur like remotely?
Right. Understanding how the Arthurian stuff is connecting to Dresden Files, I do think has worth for this Dresden Files scholarship nerd thing that we do. But they are not the same people, unless they are, which is significant. But Murphy is not Arthur.
Right. No, for sure.
Okay, scrolling. Murphy's being assigned to special investigations is Dresden's fault because Restoration of Faith got her in a bad spot because the Faith asked her case and the troll or something, so she gets bunted over to SI, I guess. I always kind of thought of it more of like inherited mantle from her father, as well as she probably mouthed off to the wrong person.
Okay.
I think it's partly true.
Yeah, in summary, sure. And who cares? No, I'm just kidding. But like, so sure, in the sense that yes, because she ran across Dresden, but she had to fill out her report truthfully, and her dad was the dude in charge of SI before they called it SI. She fucking knows what's involved here. So she probably was like, finally I get to put in my report something that's going to get me assigned to SI. Like, that's probably how that went, because like, she knows she's already got to know a little bit, like her mom knew the stories. I can't imagine she didn't have any inkling.
She might have heard some things, but I got the impression that her dad never discussed any of the shit that he had or was dealing with, whether with his wife or his family, or especially not his daughter. She was 11 at the time that he killed himself.
Yeah, but I mean,
there is an inherited legacy, especially it seems like in cop families, that she might have gotten. And so being put into the same division is good. Is when she's describing of like, do you remember all those black cat files like of my dad and other people, or like she is very connected to it. And that might have left like a mark on her of like, you're going to screw up and you're going to get punted over to the same place what your father was. And she probably did speak a little bit too truthfully until she learned that she needed not to be able to get things actually taken care of.
Right. Well, I mean, I got to imagine as soon as she got into SI, she started digging through some of those files, and seeing what they're actually up to, and that sort of thing, and why everybody's here. Why does this division exist, etc. But, like, I don't know. Kids know, man. Like, I'd be surprised to, like, unless you're just completely locking yourself in the basement, which alone is a tell, right? Like, I couldn't imagine, like a long-term hiding that from my own wife, let alone my 6-year-old, let alone an 11-year-old, like they're going to figure something out. Right. At some point she caught him with the baseball bat with the nails in it. It's like, Dad, and you're like, don't worry about it. We're just,
what are you doing with the holy water and the salt?
Right.
Normal police business,
Well, then there's also her connection to people like Rollins, who was saved by Jack Murphy with the salt and the shotgun and things like, and he might have told stories, especially once he got bunted over to SI.
Right.
But granted, that was after she was over there, but she might have, she known things, especially after the troll. I just don't think you can't say that it's Dresden's fault when there's other.
And you're going to sit there. Yeah, and you're going to sit there and tell me that like she's a rookie on the force, right? And that people didn't talk in the locker room, even so much as like just like picking on the rookie, like, oh, watch out for the vampires if you get the night shift or whatever, and then just kind of joking it off. Let alone the fact that like some veteran asshole knows that she's Jack's kid, and probably took it too far. Like, I don't see her going in completely blind, is what I'm saying. And so, I mean, Dresden was there and whatever, but at the same time, Murphy made her own choices as well. And she probably knew anyway. She was probably going to wind up there anyway at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the short story that well, but isn't Murphy's reaction kind of like surprised, but not that she kind of like she handles it pretty well. Like she knew something like this existed because of her dad, right? Like that's.
It has been quite a long time since I've read it, but like as surprised as she was, she didn't let that get her frozen. Like she's like, this is a monster. It needs killing, whether or not it is new or old or wherever it came from. She just like hit the ground running, having to deal with it, and that's kind of more important than whether she cared about where it came from.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Next is Mr. is actually a magical beast of tremendous power. I think we all just want this to be true because we realize he's a 20-year-old cat and we don't want him to die.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm pretty
Jim
sure
lies
though
to
the
us,
answer yeah, but the answer is no, right? Like if anything, Mister's main connection right here is that he might be the progenitor of Rowell's race, right? Like, that's a pretty heavy theory, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just going to put this out there. I don't think that this is legitimate or anything, but I'm going to stir the pot a little bit. Harry doesn't realize it, but he's actually on his third Mister. I think that would be the funny thing. So, like,
yeah, people wouldn't like
what
that.
other giant, like, monstrous cat comes back to Dresden's house?
I think maybe in some way he could throw in a detail of the cat that attaches itself to a magic user might have increased longevity because of it, like by proximity. Some or other, because
Sure.
Cats can see ghosts, and so why not get any other benefits that like mouse cheats? I think a cat can figure it out.
Right.
I don't really know what I'm saying, but
maybe he's been eating the brownies, and that's giving him long life. So
fairy dust.
Right.
Those times when he really goes out after the catnip.
Right.
Right. Because there are multiple times when we see Harry using his sight in his apartment, and Mr. is just a plain old cat, which could only mean that all cats are special, or he's just a plain old cat. That's getting to 20
Or
years
so
old.
powerful that he can hide his true self in which
Even
we have
from
not
the
seen
sight.
anyone be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, even the angels don't hide from the sight; they just shut it down. So, man, Mister would be scary powerful. Yeah.
It's the White God. Mrs. the White God.
Oh, well. Thank you for making this supernatural and weird. So,
Mr. is part Malk. Okay. I don't really care. Because he's a big, I always picture him as a Maine Coon because he's really big, but okay. Mr. has plot armor to the degree of Joker immunity, probably because Jim knows that if Mr. dies, we'll revolt.
He's gonna kill Mr. Like, at some point to hurt us.
Nah, I don't know. He had his chance, right? He's had his chance a couple of times. So
I mean,
like
burning down the apartment.
Yeah, but he's really saving it up, right? No, Mr's safe, guys. Like, look at all these chances. Like,
right?
There's no way.
But I mean, he took a swipe at him, kind of in Deadbeat, right? Because the apartment gets compromised, and then definitely in Changes, obviously. That's where Mr. the Third comes in. But other than that, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it would be fitting. Like, Mr's the only one badass enough to die of old age in the whole Dresden Files. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think it's going to go.
Yeah.
Whether or not we see something like that, who knows? There's some people who are just going to be safe because they're too lovable for it. I think that will be Mr. Nobody will ever find out exactly what Mr. is. What is the point of this sentence? He's a cat. Mr. is an unbound avatar of an upper level god. Dear Christ, people.
Like the white god.
Yeah. So an upper level god once thought it appropriate to use Harry's dress robe as a litter box. Oh, here's this wonderful theory. Mr. is absolutely non-magical. Congratulations.
Yes. Probably true.
Mr. is a cat. Mr. is Ferrovax. Okay.
Oh.
Moving on to Bob.
What? Mr.
Right? Bob is he who walks behind or a piece of him.
No.
Yeah.
I just no. No on that one. I don't want to
You don't want to entertain the thought.
yeah, like this is one of those like, is there anything even remotely to support this? And it looks like the answer is no. Not to mention the fact that like Bob is relatively sane compared to an outsider and has a pretty well developed backstory considering he is an outsider knight, you know, so like we know his origin, we just don't know his direct parentage. But I guess that's another thing too, right? Like, didn't we got teased that in A Word of Jim, right? So was that one of our questions
or something in one of the AMAs?
Yeah, the AMA, that's what it was. Yeah. So, and so no, just done, stamped.
It's Justin. Justin doesn't know. All right. Books Bob is a ghost. He's just been dead long enough that he may as well be a spirit. Joss repeatedly by word of God. I think they pay too much attention to the TV show, which was fun.
I see.
Bob formerly worked for Odin and was called Mimir. I can agree with this. Or Kvasir.
But, okay. I mean, they talk about Eddie and the Enchanter, so...
Yeah. Yeah, Odin was assisted by the decapitated, preserved head of Mimir, although sometimes he learned magic and mead and poetry, which are all sometimes the same thing, from Kvasir, who was decapitated as well, I think. So
yeah. Well, so yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, oh well, they parallel, so they must be the same person or whatever, like Rashid noted. Excuse me.
Yeah,
but,
exactly, because Rashid is his dad, and Mab was his mom,
is...
and Rashid took it from the Norn of Winter, Skuld, something or other, because they were all in the same place, and Odin and Bob, yeah, it all works out.
Right. So, yeah, I think Mimir is just another, spirit of intellect, not necessarily Bob. Like, again, we are pretty dialed into what Bob's origin is. So unless somebody's got a very elaborate lie, which I guess is possible, then no, Unless somebody got busy with Mimir, and that was the spirit that the mortal... No, this is just getting weird. So should have quit while he was ahead. I don't...
Right. Well, when Jim says that Bob was put into a skull by Eddie and Enchanter, but Eddie was not one of the parents. But then, like, who was? Like, maybe he was just hanging around in someone's head for a long time, or wandering in the Never Never, or something or other. Because he was only put into the skull by Eddie, that doesn't give us an explanation of what happened before then.
Bob seems to be pretty fragile outside of the skull. So I don't imagine he was just like running around for a couple of centuries on his own, unless he was in the Never Never side, which I guess is possible. But
yeah, so he could be somewhere safe there. At some point, he had to be around Mab or something to build up a grudge against her, because
to learn how to kill mortals or immortals, right? But that kind of belies the fact that it's like, okay, so again, we've got a cloud of potentially intersecting points. The reason why I'm talking about this, though, is because the same kinds of things have been said about Bonea, right? Bonea potentially has like a database of knowledge that Lash would have had. She just doesn't know how to access it, and she doesn't know how to connect the dots and make them like functional, right? So
Yeah.
she's got what 47, recipes for pancakes. Pancakes
37.
are inanimate, whatever the number is, 47 Star Trek number. I just pulled it out of thin Star Trek. But yeah, so she's got all of these recipes, right? But that doesn't mean she knows which ones are good and which ones we've got ingredients for until she like brings that in. In a similar way, like, I'm guessing that's where Bob learned how to kill immortals, is because, again, Mab is like one of the leading candidates for one of the parents. So the other question is, who was the other one? Probably not Edian, but maybe, I don't know. Like, could it have been a knight? Could it have been 100 other things or people? Whatever. Like I guess because we've met them both, right? So it's got to be somebody we know somehow. So maybe it was one of the senior council, even for some reason,
Right.
Like Langtree, the part of his seedy dark past. But because again, like Eddie and the Enchanter puts like the late 1700s, isn't that it?
I thought he was earlier than that. I thought he was like
earlier than that,
1500s.
So that starts to limit it down. That's more like Rashid's playground because he cheats.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying is, like, that's where Bob learned the immortality thing because he was part Mab, so.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. Why are you excited about this?
Because Rashid and Mab made a baby, I think.
Because Odin and Mab made a baby?
Yeah,
So.
it's totally. Like, so what if it wasn't Mab? What if Mama was Mother Winter? And something or other. Yeah, I don't like, but she would definitely have all of that information.
Sure.
Of how to kill an immortal, how to kill everything, because she wants everything to die.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, yeah. So not Mother Winter. I mean, it could be like another, high level Fae though, right? So, but like you gotta also consider like some of them are going to be limited based off of their mantle, right? So I gotta guess that Mother Winter can't create babies any more than Molly could, for example, right? Because that's not in her power base. Mab seems to be able to, since she has kids, potentially even after she ascended or whatever you want to call it, assume the mantle. But
yeah,
so
we have a rough date as to when he was put in the skull, but do we have a rough date of his age?
Bob?
Yeah.
No. I mean, not until we find out, how long he was running around and
because then that would put like, what if it was Mother Winter before she was Mother Winter or something, or because she was one of the original ones before Mab ascended or something, and they all shifted upwards.
But if she's Scold, if she's like if she's part of the Fates, then she might have always been there, just with a different name, right? So just during the Middle Ages, that's all they say. I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, there's possibilities. Like right now, it kind of sounds like if it was a wizard, then two of her. But it's somebody we've met. So unless it's somebody that we've met that's incognito, that kind of narrows it down to Rashid. So that's what I'm going to say right now. Is like, it's like unless it's like Cowl or somebody else that you wouldn't expect for some reason because we don't know enough of their backstory. Like it's going to be like Rashid and Mab. So perks of being on the job, I guess, So
I'm sure it helps with the gates somehow.
Right. Well, the problem was Rashid said stakeout and Mab heard makeout, and the rest is history. So
well, Rashid had a piece of the stone table. He was there.
Not necessarily, but okay. I mean,
but he had.
I'm not saying that he couldn't have never been there. I'm just saying he didn't necessarily get the stone table with like. This is getting weird. Like my inappropriate jokes are starting to take off with me, so I'm going to invoke the filter and just be like,
let's move on.
Like, could you imagine him getting busy with Mab and he's over there with a chisel and a hammer, just like, anyway, see, this is anyway. So
Okay. Moving on. Molly will compensate for Harry's lacking strength with lasers. Or for lacking Harry's strength with lasers. Okay, put the words in the right order and they make a little bit more sense. Because light shows? Because light shows are helpful? Holomancy will someday grow to encompass light 'em up and hard light tropes. But now she doesn't need that because she's the Winter Lady and has tons of power, I guess. So, pointless. I don't even want to say Joss, it's just pointless. Michael
Dismissed.
knew all along that Charity was one of Gregor's cult practitioners. Didn't he know that? Because she was one of the...
He
Didn't he know
saved her
that?
from the dragon.
Yeah.
I gotta imagine he knew a little bit about the guy who tied her up to the stake, waiting to be eaten by a dragon.
I mean, I know she didn't want to talk about her abilities or anything, or any of the extent of what she did. That's why she was asking Harry not to tell either. But, I mean, yeah, she was involved. Michael would have at least known that, whether or not she had magical ability or not.
Like Mike, kind of like how Michael's little like every time Harry's like, Michael, I've got to tell you this thing. Michael's like, yeah, I've known for 10 years.
Yeah, the same thing with Molly too. It's like to a certain Michael probably knows, and he's just not going to say anything to Charity until she's ready to talk about it, which might be never, and he's okay with that because he's accepting.
Yes, it's
Because he's
money.
Superman.
That's so Michael's modus operandi. Actually, yeah, no, I don't care. Whatever.
Right.
What's for dinner? Okay, and then this question: Bob's parents.
Right. We
Like,
talked about this.
Yeah.
There's no new information in this. They're assuming that Eddie and the Enchanter would have been the human parent. So then
Yeah.
they're
I
trying
also
to figure
understand
out
this is
who's
the only way to create an like a spirit of intellect.
Sure. But I mean, and that's still out there, right? We don't know for sure, but at the same time, like, we also have word of Jim that is pretty much how a spirit of intellect gets created, right? So it's like it's not necessarily still the only way, but it seems to be a pretty strong indication. Tell you what, if you want a new and unique AMA or convention question, you can ask, what are all the different ways that a spirit of intellect could be created? Boom, you'd add something to the fandom. So,
Or you could ask about the story about how his first novel was published.
Dead. I'm dead. Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Last one on Friends is Butters is a descendant of David. Isn't that kind of implied for Jews? Most of it.
Right.
I don't remember
mean,
much of
yes.
Judaism.
This is like a retrograde theory, right? Because this goes back to Harry trying to figure out who should potentially inherit the swords, and that all of the knights seem to be descended from great kings in the past and whatever.
Mhm.
Which, whatever, So yes, sure, Butters is a descendant of David. Why not?
All right. Moving on to Harry's family. Malcolm Dresden was murdered, and then Harry finds out about it and confronts who did it. He will say, "My name is Harry Dresden. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Of course, he would say that as a reference, but who killed Malcolm? Well, the next one wants a idea of De Morn murdered Harry's father, except when Malcolm died, Harry was in the foster orphanage for like a handful of years. We could have just tidied that up a little bit. There's no need to stick him in the foster care. If something did kill Malcolm,
we know it was foul play for,
Yeah, it was like,
for Harry's dad.
but I
don't
guess
think
the evidence for De Morn specifically doesn't seem to be right.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
obviously it's called orphan laundering, right? So once you off their parents, then you've got to put the orphan in the system for a couple of years so that there's no strings attached, so that when you pull him out of the system, they don't think it was you.
Warren actually just really needed that government check.
Right. But I thought Malcolm's death was like vanilla, right?
It's been said somewhere in the books. It escapes me who says it, how, where, when, but it is like hinted that your dad's
Chauncey.
death was not natural. Chancey, yeah, right. That's all the way back then.
Yeah, but he's also a dirty fucking liar versus like Word of Jim, which, you know, I know some of you think that he's also a dirty fucking liar.
Like,
He's
shit,
definitely
yeah.
a dirty
You know.
He
fucking
lied to
liar.
my face. I won't get over that.
About what?
Mavra.
Like, I don't remember. What about it?
I specifically asked, when do we see Mavra again? And he said, mirror, mirror. And so I didn't expect Mavra to be in Peace Talks Battleground. And there she was doing necromancy.
Oh, well.
Being the drummer bitch.
Shit changes, man. Like, yeah, that's...
Lied to my face.
Whatever. I don't think... I'm just saying that one's not very egregious to me, right? Like, you know, it was probably like, well, shit, we better have Dracul in this, and then who's going to be with him? Well, shit, I guess it's going to be Mavra, you know? He probably had it on his big board of facts to be like, shit, I told that one chick in that one, you know, podcast that she wasn't
giggling
showing
all
up
the way. That's like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
What a cool way to set Dracul up, though. Like, have Mavra be his drummer bitch.
It doesn't seem
Mavra
to be...
was the least.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
So
I'm
what I
crazy.
think we know of Malcolm is that he was a vanilla mortal, but his death was foul play, according to Jim. So who did the foul play? Big giant question mark.
Yeah, I think that's actually... it's hard to know. Even guess at, probably. Like,
Okay.
there's a lot of factions that could have kind of been involved, but it's probably someone we know, right? That's a good story reel.
Right. It's Cal. It's probably Cal. The next couple are getting really dumb, so just prepare yourself. Harry's real father is one of the yet unmet Denarians.
Next. Like, that one just makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit. Like,
Next one is
why?
even stupider, in my opinion. Harry's father was actually Uriel.
Well, you know, when you're running around sowing plagues and stuff like that, you got to sow some wild oats sometimes too. That's just, everybody knows that. It's what the author would do. There, got it in this episode. So
It's in his style. To just, I don't even want to read any of that. Okay.
yeah. Also, I forgot in which book, but Kincaid says that he is as human as Dresden. Shortly afterwards, it is revealed that Kincaid is the Hellhound and decidedly not human.
Is it possible that Kincaid was lying?
Nobody lies.
No,
in the
Harry's
Dresden
not
Files.
human. He's a wizard. He lives for 300 years on average.
Right. Like, that's the thing. Like, I think Kincaid is easily a scion, right? Whereas, like, he's poking at Dresden not being straight vanilla mortal. Like, I mean, Harry is, right? His parents were, theoretically anyway, but, like, because of wizard, he's not really, right? And so, like, that's where I think, like, Kincaid
Because
is
of
being cheeky.
Wizard, because of Starborn.
Right.
I mean, who knows what any of that is doing.
Right.
Okay. Margaret Le Faye engineered Harry's birth with special powers to atone for some mistakes she did during her bad girl days.
Next. Yeah.
She clearly engineered the birth.
Right.
But
we don't know anything about that. Like, that's part of the problem. Like, there's no evidence whatsoever, you know. You know, shit. It just intersected with Dune a little bit. Margaret is Jessica.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what she did. Margaret found out about, you know, the Starborn thing and the fulcrum, and she decided she had to have it or whatever. So she had, you know, she purposely set up the birth in such a way. Like,
she
that's
had
what
a
she's doing.
reasonable
She
bet,
wanted-
maybe even engineered that her child was going to be a powerful wizard. And
Right.
she could time it as to, this is going to happen at this time. He's going to be born on Halloween. He's going to be a Starborn.
Right.
Voila.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Margaret's murder was part of the timing to make Harry Starborn. Are these just the same bits that we were already talking about because entropy curse something? Or, I don't know. Yes, timing mattered. Timing mattered, both in her death and his birth and everything. All right, now getting on to Margaret Le Faye was a changeling. Maybe.
No.
Well, no. We know
Did
that his wife
Ebenezer
was.
is she a bastard? Did Ebenezer get funky with somebody else? Because we know Ebenezer's wife was plain vanilla mortal.
At some point,
So-
I don't fully remember where, but they clarified that Ebenezer's wife may not have been her mother.
I do not remember having ever heard this before.
The encyclopedia isn't here because he's doing Thanksgiving things with his family.
Fucking
Deputy G!
Americans. Your Thanksgivings.
He's probably more like doing Christmas shopping or something. Like, unless he's doing like a family Thanksgiving on the weekend. Like,
But that's
nobody's
what I thought he said.
celebration lasts 3 days. So,
I mean,
But-
you can if you wanted to. It's just, but
Sure.
podcasts are important, man.
Yeah,
I need the
it's-
encyclopedia.
yeah.
Right. I mean, a lot of people are just going to be swayed on the fact that Margaret's name was Le Faye, except for it wasn't.
That was a nickname.
You didn't read far enough yet. So,
At what point are you twigging about?
heck, maybe Leah is Margaret's mother. That would make Leah Harry's grandmother, would explain why she was the one who Margaret turned to when she got into trouble and why she would be willing to make her Harry's godmother. This would certainly explain why Thomas was burned when Leah kissed him in grave peril at the party if she knew that she was his grandmother and she loved him. The burn is inevitable.
No.
Parental love for a child doesn't shield against wraiths because it's not love between equals. A grandmother... What the fucking fuck?
That is actually never established, but it's true love, right? It's hinted as romantic love, not familiar love.
It's romantic love because they're also trying to subvert it with porn.
Oh, okay, hold on. This one's personal, so I have to read the final bullet point in this section. Ebenezer is short and stocky. Harry's height isn't coming from him. Leah, on the other hand, is super tall. Okay, so first of all, she's Faye. She's as tall as she wants to be. She's probably as tall as her station is. Seems to be some of the math into it. But this became personal because my grandfather would be of a similar build as Ebenezer, right? My grandfather was like 5.5 feet tall. My dad was like 6'2", pretending to be 6'4" this whole time. He married my mom, who was 5'10", and I'm above 6 feet, right? But it's pretty funny because my grandfather is so short compared to, what my dad was and what I was, or what I am, that, my dad's sister also came out kind of average height. She always harassed him about stealing all the height in the family because basically it's like my dad's entire family is average height, but he came out above 6 feet tall. So just saying, it doesn't have to be fucking magic unless I'm really pissed off that my grandfather didn't tell me he was an archmage. Like, so mad.
He's actually... It's because you're a fucking squib, dude.
Right? But fucking tell me that too. So...
I mean, when Harry sees Margaret in the soul gaze and blood rites, she's tall. She's flat-footed, but she's like 6 foot, which is tall for a woman. So she has height from somewhere. It doesn't need to come from Ebenezer. And there's all sorts of things about what malnutrition as a child and shit like that. If he's 300-something years old, what was nutrition like back then?
Fair.
People want genetics to work predictably, and it doesn't. But Leah can burn Thomas's neck in grave peril for many reasons and through many methods. It does not need to be because she's in love.
Well, the problem is we've got Occam's razor for that already. 5 minutes ago, she had a big meal that involved love. And then she kissed somebody. Have you ever eaten spicy food and then kissed somebody? Like, I'm just saying, like, that's all that needs to be there. But somehow Leah's a changeling, had a baby with Margaret, and just all these. Sorry, I know I'm getting all the crazy points confused. But
she did what?
Right? Look, she's Faye. She can do whatever she wants. So, but
I guess, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense for like this tiny thing that has basically had no impact on the story like whatsoever outside of the book it was in. And here we are, 10 plus years later, and we're still talking about it. I think that's funny. So.
As support for Margaret being a changeling is because she was an outcast, because changelings are not accepted by either. I think changelings are accepted just as well, but she was an outcast because she didn't enjoy the rules as Lucio described.
Yeah. Well, and she was properly a wizard though, right? Like the difference, I think they're funneling Summer Night in the kids there, right? Because Meryl and Fix and whatever.
Those kids were picked on.
Right.
But changelings at large, I think, are okay.
Right.
Or maybe they're not. Maybe they are just perpetual victims of whoever who wants. But it's like until you choose.
It seems also like that's kind of like depends on who their parent is. If we look at the Red Cap, he does not give a shit about his kid. Right. But Mab clearly still has affection for her children. Her changeling child as well. So I think that's up to there's not a wide rule for the Fae how they act with their children. So there is parents who protect them and parents who don't.
Yeah. The next one is Harry and Thomas have more siblings out there. Because fucking why?
Well, you see, because Leah. No, I'm just kidding.
because they everything must be threes.
Shit, that's a good point.
Oh my god! Don't even joke about that. People will take it too seriously. Same thing with Harry's children.
Shit, that's a good point.
This is all hinged off of something that Nicodemus said to him.
Oh, youngest, because you're the youngest. Yes, but no, you can have a youngest in a binary of two.
Yes,
but what they say, you don't use youngest or oldest instead of two.
Okay,
yes,
you
do.
Yeah.
And can you trust what Nicodemus says? Depends.
I mean, has he ever lied to Harry?
Plenty of times.
Has he?
Actually, hold on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You're just shooting shit out of your mouth, aren't you? But I mean, like, for reals though, like I feel like he's always kind of been on the level with Harry. I can't.
Okay, so in Skin Game, he probably wouldn't have lied because of playing by Mab's rules, but in, say, Small Favor, no, he did mostly lie by omission and like deception of like, come talk to me for 10 minutes in this room and don't pay attention to what's happening over there. It's not speaking an untruth. It's distraction.
He
did literally waylay an angelic messenger to lie to the knights, but
by omission. And so that,
Harry,
like, when you say like speaking untruth versus just don't say these words that really change the meaning of something, it can be.
That's just kind of his.
A fairy can lie by omission. A fairy cannot speak an untruth. Right. And if Nicodemus is playing by the same rules for whatever reason, maybe just by habit, then they would do things differently.
Yeah.
If you want to be a grammar Nazi about it, people arguing about grammar on TVTropes is just delicious.
Are we going to finish this section?
Who knows? I'm betting on at least one changeling sibling because she's called Le Faye for a reason. After all, I'm also betting that the brother named Richard because Tom, Dick, and Harry. That is the level of evidence we are getting. I'll move on.
Thomas has the power to rule the White Court. This turns into a Three Stooges joke, like 20 fucking books just to get the Three Stooges or something like.
How many books for the anvil joke to land? There does seem to be a promise that Thomas is going to rule the White Court at some point because he survived so far. Leah's probably going to die because now she's hooked up with Harry.
Laura?
Thank you.
You said
Laura.
Leah.
I did say Leah. You're right.
Yeah, she's the other freaky chick banging Harry to have changeling offspring. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
So.
Because, of course, they're going to bang, even though probably not. Thomas wasn't nearly as shaken by the events of Turncoat as was suggested, and was faking his face heel turn to become a spy in the White Court. He might make a good position for himself, but that seemed to seriously affect him, as it should, because that was horrible.
He was tortured a lot, like,
Lots
but he
of
was
times.
faking it. Like, this just sounds gross just saying it out loud. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he bounces back to more or less normal and changes because there was a crisis on their hands, and you don't have time for trauma. You must deal with a child that is going to be sacrificed and kill you.
yeah, I mean, he literally was doing the mopey vampire thing until Harry said, I've got Spawn and we need to save it. And then Thomas was like, to the mission.
Yeah. It's like, I thought you were just trying to save my immortal soul again.
Right. But also, I mean, Thomas's situation's a little bit different from, like, if you and I were tortured in a similar way, because he's actually a predator, right? So it's like, we're torturing a lion by force feeding it meat to get it off of its tofu diet, right? So, like, there is some room for him, like, coming to terms with the fact that this is part of his nature. But as far as, like, how it's portrayed, it's basically just straight up torture, right? It's just like, even the Negloshi was gloating about it, and I mean, he's evil, he knows evil, so I'll trust him on that. But yeah, pretending Thomas was faking it, I don't know.
Thomas is now possessed by an outsider parasite. Except if that were true, then Peace Talk Battlegrounds wouldn't need to happen the way it would necessarily.
It's probably posted before that.
Oh yeah.
So Josh.
Yeah.
All right. Ebenezer McCoy is aware of Thomas and that he is Harry's brother.
Seems like no, at least until. No, I mean, he still doesn't, right?
Because the reveal happened in Peace Talks, right? Because that's why they had to.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's when he
And then he
like blows his chest
Harry.
out. Yeah.
All right. Harry's grandmother was one of the Summer Court, maybe even one of the queens. Excuse me?
Well,
Summer.
I don't know. Was she Leah or was she somebody else? Like,
was she Titania?
Yes, right. That's why she's so mad. You killed your not. Yeah, right. Like, how would that work? If you're the grandchild and you, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But if Margaret was a child of a Summer Fae, then why was she so attached to Leah, the Winter Fae?
Why Sarissa, who was the daughter of the Winter,
the casualty of chess pieces, essentially.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's not like there's precedence or something, but you're starting to make this sound like some kind of like 9/11 truth or conspiracy, where it's like, why is the daughter of the Winter Court suddenly the lady of the Summer Court? It's an inside job. I mean, kind of like Maeve was inside; she killed her, but.
Yeah, and then the next one is Titania is Margaret Le Fay's mother. It's like, do people speak to each other?
The same thing, right?
Summer Court, and then Titania, so they get more specific.
Honestly, I would almost just allow it just because it'd be funny as shit at this point that, like, Titania hates him so much, and they're like somehow blood related. But no, like, again, no.
It doesn't work that way. Ebenezer messed with Harry's mind to make him more obedient to him.
No.
I doubt it. Technically possible because black stuff, whatnot, but no.
Yeah. So Ebenezer also doesn't exactly seem like the guy who's got the subtlety that seems to be implied and required with mind magic, right? Ebenezer is a hammer. So if he went mucking around in your brain with his grubby little fingers, you're not coming out the same. So yes, it's technically possible, and he's old, and he's like an archmage and whatever, but like Ebenezer is the kind of guy that likes to hit things with a hammer because it is a straightforward solution, I don't see him as doing a lot of subtlety. So
Ebenezer is descended from Merlin because of the journals.
I like
because the journals.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's more of the Yoda line myself, but so he's not necessarily like the blood of Merlin, but he certainly went to school with him more or less, for an analogy.
Maggie Dresden will marry Harry Carpenter.
Okay.
I doubt it because they're
Adorable. It's adorable. Let's think happy thoughts. So. Just no. Fuck you. Are you kidding me? Like, God. The next one, the parasite will be named Olive. Are you shitting me? Like, why would you even write that out?
Because wood. Because the olive wood. I mean, Ashley is a better name for that because ash is also a wood, I think.
Oh, we're talking about Bonea. I thought we were talking about Nemesis or something. We like the evil villain of the entire series is named Olive. Like, no. Like, Jesus.
No, they're talking about Harry's family. We're in the section of Harry's family, his blood relatives.
Well, it's not like
non-blood relatives
come up because of Thomas and a few other things. So, like,
that is possible.
And for all we know, Nemesis is Harry's grandmother. Okay, that's going to be one that we're going to read in two things. So.
Yeah, sure. He Who Walks Beside was Margaret's mom, and yeah, this works out great.
He Who Walks Beside was Margaret's mother. Just wanted to say that again slower for those keeping score on.
There was another version of Justine that Ebenezer fell for. This works out.
So we don't call them outsiders because they are outside of reality. We call them outsiders because they've come out of the closet. Okay, so little did we know that Jim was actually the most progressive author of all time because.
Okay. Right. This is talking about Bonea before Bonea was named, so this is just old. Okay. Margaret Le Faye was building an army of evil supernaturals for a good cause. What?
Some kind of Suicide Squad?
Are you proud of yourself for that?
Yes, I'm so happy. Like, how many times can you make a Suicide Squad reference and it's actually good and relevant? Like, come on. Oh, geez.
Because she was running around the ways and aligning with bad guys.
The worst part about this is that the bones are there, but I think Margaret is not the right person. Margaret is not an Amanda Waller, just saying. However, the fact that Harry, but more like even still not Mab. The fact that Harry has control of the inmates in Demon Reach, that's basically what's going to happen, right? Like, they didn't run around making a bunch of alliances so that they can fight for Team Reality, even though that also is out there, right? Because that's what I say about Nicodemus, is that Nicodemus, as misguided as he is still on Team Reality, right? Yeah. So you might still see some of that in the BAT. But I think we're really going to watch, Harry ride a kaiju into battle because he's going to pull it out of Demon Reach or whatever, right? And so in a way, that's there. It's just not Margaret doing it, So Dalton really wants me to say the line. So.
I know. It's kind of adorable.
Yeah.
Next one.
Say the line, Bart.
The Dresden family came from Dresden, Germany, and or survived or escaped the bombing. It's Malcolm Dresden's family must have just been from Dresden, but there's no way that you can say for certain that they survived the bombing. They just had the name.
We know how he got the name. There doesn't need to be an in-universe explanation. Like,
yeah, it's just a name.
We know how Murphy got her name from her dad. So, that's all we need to know.
Ebenezer's loathing for White Court vampires first arose because his marriage was spoiled by one of them. Not because a white vampire actually killed his wife or even seduced her. If that were the reason, Ebenezer wouldn't have been able to stomach attending a dinner. What? No. It's just because they killed his daughter. It's like people haven't read the books, or this is old. Probably old.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit more longer and personal than that, but I guess that's a very simple and straightforward explanation, that he hates them because, he thinks they got to Margaret So, but
Yeah, but that's not his marriage.
no, yeah, no, I know. I'm just just his hate in general is what I'm thinking about. Like this is nonsense. So I mean, because what was was Krakatoa was the one he blew up? Like I'm pretty sure that was the time somebody fucking killed his wife.
Not Krakatoa. I think it was somewhere in Madrid. That was
Madrid, right? Okay,
I think so. I think that was the one that he did when they killed his wife or hurt her or something.
Right.
The encyclopedia is not here.
Right? Yeah.
And how dare he?
Yeah, podcasts matter. Family doesn't. Go away.
Harsh. Look, if it makes you feel better, he probably didn't want to be there either. I hope his family's not watching because that's just funny. So, but major eruptions. There are a bunch, like during places he could have been doing it, but none that I kind of like. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd be curious for sure, and like we know he did. So he was like in the list of his things, he was talking about Tunguska as well, right? But then we also found out that Tunguska was the last time that a dragon got killed. So
on the mortal realm,
right? Yeah, right. Because supposedly Michael killed one, also like capital D.
Yeah.
I would like to clean that up because that's some stuff that I feel like is a little fuzzy, from Jim's side. But
I found in some of the archive on the subreddit I had one basic question on the thing, some of the Ebenezer fight. So was the New Madrid earthquake event Ebb's first act as a job or for Blackstaff or something? Did Ebb accidentally kill his wife during said event? What was the reason for the event? What begins or circumstances? Whatever. Yeah. So it was the New Madrid one, earthquake, and 1811, 1812, where something bad happened to his wife, and he lost it.
Right.
All right. We have successfully gone through the friends and family section. That means that there's only one section left, and that is just Harry. It's all going to be about Harry, and it's going to be annoying. But I get to laugh at it, so.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. There.
And cut.
All right. So next time we're doing Harry for Tristan. I don't even know if we agreed to what we're doing for next week for while we weren't recording, because I think people were complaining, people being Andreas.
You're complaining about the Muppets?
I don't care about Muppets at all. Like
nobody gives a shit about your gangster movie, but we fucking watched that too.
Sure, like I have no relation to the Muppets.
So bring it. So bring all your hate. Tell us how it's not perfect, so we can fight you. It's got Michael freaking Caine in it, man. I watched it last week. I'm gonna watch it again. We're doing.
I've
Muppet
not seen
Christmas
this one
Carol,
specific.
Right? What?
That's what EG said. That's what he wanted. I've not seen this one. I remember Muppets when I was a kid, but it's just I didn't have an aversion to it the way Andreas seemed to. But then he shared in the Discord of what his version of Muppets was in his childhood, and it was an atrocity that can only come from communism.
Yeah, so tell us more about how your childhood was filled with prehensile penises, and then we'll argue about which one's better for children, the Muppets or that shit.
That's not my childhood. That's the current kids. And I think it's something about teaching body positivity or something. I'm not sure.
Yes, I too wish for a day where my penis will save children everywhere. Please don't kill me or cancel me for that shit. I was obviously being sarcastic, you fucks. So
FBI is already on their way, dude.
I know, right?
Yeah, if
Yeah,
all we
I got-
know is
I
like
gotta
we have
see
one
the TV show.
dedicated viewer, which is the FBI.
Right. Hey, man, as long as my
Cody's an
FBI agent
FBI
is...
agent?
Oh, I'm so proud of him. I wish he would have told me sooner.
All right. Well,